Welcome to the Anochi podcast. We have myself, Adam Mordechai Klasner, Nachman Four. We're going to be co-leading this experience. We together have been running an organization called Anochi, where we help men who are ready to heal, who are ready to grow, who are ready to start leading their lives from within and taking responsibility. We're going to do our best to have real conversations here. That's the goal of the podcast, to give you an experience of what actually happens on our workshop. And we've been running workshops together for about 12 years. About 1,800 men have been through our workshops, so we have experience. And we want to talk about relevant subjects that people can relate to and see the workshop from a podcast perspective rather than needing to come on a workshop.
And give people value of what we do on the workshop so that they could take this work home and actually make real shifts in their lives.
Yeah, so since we have so much experience, we've been doing this for so many years, we like to talk about things that relate to the people that we work with. Today's topic, what we're going to be diving into is intimacy in relationships, specifically with a spouse, and what's relevant to talk about in that subject.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit off the cuff, but I have seen, and I know you have seen, working with many men, that a lot of men struggle with intimacy, with getting close to their wives. And what do you think is the number one reason for people that struggle with that?
That's a great question. And I remember, and I say this a lot, that I used to fight with my wife every single day. Even before I got married, I told myself I want to be a great husband. And yet I go into marriage and there's disagreements, and I would shut down, or we'd fight, or we'd scream at each other. And it something didn't make sense because I love this woman, and yet it was almost every single day that we were fighting. And it kept on happening over and over and over again until I started working on myself. And what I started realizing is that it's not her that's creating the fight. It's not even me. There's something deeper inside me that's creating this friction in our relationship. And what I found out over years of working with men, of doing my own work, is that when I bring in my trauma, my disconnection from myself into my marriage, it's going to show up in the ways that when my wife says something to me, I'm going to process it in a certain way. I'm going to be triggered, and that trigger is going to bring up old dysfunctions that I've had in relationships, not just with my wife, but with anybody. And instead of taking responsibility for that dysfunction and working through that, I would put it on my wife. So I would say, my wife is making me angry. My wife is putting too much strain on me. My wife is overwhelming me. And I would keep on putting it on her instead of doing some self-reflection and realizing, hey, what's going on for you? and therefore, I think the number one blockage in a relationship, in marriage, is when someone doesn't recognize or take responsibility for his own stuff, for his own dysfunctions. And you'll see that once you start taking responsibility, because I did it, and I'm not this amazing, anybody can do this, is, okay, my wife said something that made me angry. Okay, let's walk through that. What's really going on? Well, what's really going on is she's reminding me that I have an insecurity. Okay, so let's deal with that insecurity, or let's deal with that unmet need that I have. And instead of dumping it back on her, I work through it myself. And then once I start working through things myself, I could have proper communication with my wife. And, everybody says communication is key in marriage, 100%. But before communication even happens, and it's an ongoing process, I need to work on myself. I need to find out what are my dysfunctions, what are my patterns that keep playing out. Because if you notice, in most marriages, or in every marriage, or in every relationship, the same fight will keep coming over and over again in different colors and different flavors. But at the core of the issue, it's the same issue every single time. So deal with the issue as opposed to blaming and blaming yourself, blaming your wife. Take responsibility.
Okay, so a couple questions on that because it's a good segue into this is so I hear that, but I don't think anyone, when they go into a marriage, thinks that I don't want to take responsibility or I don't want to have a good relationship. So what's not allowing me, and it sounds like you've already said it, allowing me to start changing the way the relationship is with my wife as opposed to what I grew up with my family, my parents.
Yeah. So uh, I just spoke to someone last week, and he was telling me that he walks on eggshells around his wife. And he was telling me that his wife is so stubborn, and his wife gets, it's easily to get angry. So therefore, he has to walk on eggshells. But that's not the truth. He's walking on eggshells because he wants to walk on eggshells because he's afraid of confrontation, and he's afraid of hearing his wife scream at him. Well, it's not really that she's screaming at him, but he interprets it that she's screaming at him. Why is he doing that? Is because he's always had to walk on eggshells his whole life. He always had to be a people pleaser his whole life. So he's always afraid of confrontation. So yeah, people come into marriage thinking, I really want to take responsibility. But it's their brain telling them that. Unconsciously in their body, their unconscious system has a certain set of patterns, a certain identity that they have that they're holding on to, and their unconsciousness really propels them every single day to just continue doing the things that he's always been doing. And that's including the unhealthy patterns in his life. So
Yeah.
the idea is to start becoming aware of those unconscious patterns. And that's how I could take responsibility.
So you're saying that if a person had a childhood where they were given certain programs or certain ways of relationship, like walking on eggshells, that it's almost definite that he's going to repeat that in his current relationship.
Correct.
And the reason is because this is what's, as you're saying, it's called unconscious, but the programs that he lives through, the way he processes life, because as a kid, we know you take life from the outside in. And so today he's showing up in the same way, not even realizing it. So to bring that unconscious thing, what's unconscious is where he's generating his life from. So the first step you're saying is to bring awareness. This is where I'm generating my life from. I'm generating my life from walking on eggshells. Why? Because I don't want my wife to scream with me. Why don't I want my wife to scream with me? Because maybe that's going to tell me that I'm not a good person or I'm not good enough.
Right. Right.
And so, what is the first step to becoming aware of this? Like you're saying, bring it from the unconscious to the conscious. Like, how do I do that?
Right. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. It's maybe going to therapy. Maybe it's starting to take a personal accounting of what's really going on, speaking to a friend, speaking to a coach, coming to a workshop, and getting those tools. I remember before 13 years ago, I was very frustrated in life in many different areas of my life, and I knew that there was something wrong, and I knew that there had to be tools out there. That was a big frustration of mine. I knew I wanted to change. I knew I wanted to work on myself. I just didn't have the tools. And then finally, when my brother said, "Why don't you attend this workshop?" or "Why don't you speak to this guy, this coach?" And I spoke to somebody and I went to a workshop, it started giving me those tools to to start doing that self-reflection and to start looking at or give me the tools to look at every time I get emotionally activated. Here's a pair of tools that I could take home with me and work through and take responsibility. And it takes support. I can't do it on my own. It takes friends. It takes, a men's group once a week, or whatever it takes for each person to actually take a real personal accounting and responsibility for themselves.
So this personal accounting and I guess you call it awareness or self-reflection, as you said, is a person needs to put themselves in an environment to be able to create that where I can realize, okay, this is how I'm showing up. And so once they know that, they're aware of the issue, does that mean it's automatically gonna make a switch? And what I've seen is it doesn't always automatically make a switch. So knowing the 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 problem, the sickness is half the healing, they say.
Right.
So what's the next step? I'm aware. Okay, I'm aware that I'm doing this with my wife, but she's still triggering me and it still bothers me. And even though I'm aware, it's still not nice how she's treating me. It's still not nice when, she tells me something and even though I might be interpreting it as criticism, it actually feels that way.
Right. So, what we've done together is, well, there's many different tools. There's different people, different coaches, different philosophy. But something that I believe in, we have a tool called outside the box. And basically, the outside the box could break down any situation and help you see it in a much more clear way.
Okay, so let's say I see it in a clear way. Again, it's that self-reflection piece. Maybe we'll give an example to make it more practical that people can relate to it. But I become aware, fine. How do, like, for me, I know if I'm aware, it's not enough for me to stop
Right.
in a moment of reaction when, my kids are getting on my nerves or, my wife is telling me something that she thinks that I'm not doing right. Like, I hate to be taught things. It's like a deep trigger of mine that I always felt, when I was being taught things that I wasn't good enough or I was not smart enough or, it says something about me rather than just me taking the feedback. I'm feeling triggered. How do I work with that trigger? Like, tell me practically.
So, okay, good. So in the moment, sometimes you can't deal with a trigger because your wife is middle talking to you or your kids are middle talking to you. And what I would tell people, if they can, take that trigger and say, hey, I'm going to deal with you later. And if they can't, and they make a mistake and they scream at their wives and they get into dysfunction, that happens. But at the very least, they should practice these tools the next morning or later that day. And what these tools will do is not just give you an awareness, but it will get into your unconscious system, because the outside the box tools is very much about breathing into your body and breathing into your subconscious and getting in touch with it. So it's not just an awareness of, oh, I'm getting angry and I'm thinking that I'm not good enough, but it's also an awareness that I've been carrying this message of when people tell me what to do and I'm not good enough my whole life. So let's go into your life and dive into that and maybe even go back in time and see where you picked up that message and give you a reframe. It's almost like you're reframing your life. And first of all, you realize my wife is not making me angry. My wife is just saying, hey, why can't you do this? When she says, why can't you do this? It triggers an old thought, an old belief system, which comes with an emotion. And that emotion helps me get into my subconscious. And that's what the outside the box is it's not just becoming aware that I could take responsibility, but it's also bringing that awareness into my body so I see the patterns that have kept on playing out in my life over and over and over again. And then once I could do that, I literally could go back in time and reframe my life and say, no, it's not that I'm not good enough. the truth is I do matter. The truth is I am good enough. And therefore, now that I come back to relationship with my wife, and my wife says, hey, you're not doing this and this, I don't get triggered because I've done some work. I've sat with my coach. I've sat with my friends. I've gone to my men's group and I processed this specific trigger.
So if I hear what you're saying, I'm going from a place of being triggered and acting out on my trigger, which sometimes happen. We all lose ourselves. So my wife, and I'll just give my example. My wife tells me something that she perceives that I'm not doing right, or she's even just giving me feedback about something I could do this better. I think you should try this approach or that approach. I start feeling angry because I'm like, you're always teaching me. You're not my teacher. You're my spouse. You're my equal. Like, stop putting me down, thinking she's actually putting me down. And I'm starting to get angry and I'm boiling inside, like, don't do this to me. And what you're saying is this has nothing to do with my wife
Correct.
and her telling me that you need some feedback on this, and me getting angry has nothing to do with this moment.
Correct.
It has to do with this message that whatever I'm carrying around needing to be taught something. Well, a message that I carried when I was a kid is that I'm not smart enough. I'm not as smart as, and I watched, let's say, an older brother be more studious, he did better at school, it was easier for
There you
him.
go.
And I'm sitting with this message of I'm not smart enough. So when you're teaching me, I'm a student again, and I don't want to be a student right now. So that frustrates me and I get angry, but I'm not angry at you. You've revealed something that's sitting inside of me. And so what do most men do? They react. They say, you're not my teacher. No, you're my equal. And even if that's justifiable, like I'll say, that is justifiable for me to say to my wife, you're not my teacher. And it's okay. But can I take feedback without making her into the teacher and putting me into this role where I think that I'm not smart? So now you're going through that, but in the moment you can't like stop, like, in those movies they stop time and you can like sort things out and then come back and you show up to the moment. That's not how real life works. You get triggered, you lose yourself, you yell at your wife,
Yeah.
or you shut down.
That's why you should do this work even more, so that you're prepared that the next time your wife tries to give you advice or feedback, you've already worked through the triggers. So, when you start doing this work and taking responsibility, yeah, you are going to make mistakes and you are going to lose it and you're going to get triggered. But if you keep checking in with those triggers, what will eventually end up happening is those triggers won't trigger you anymore.
Well, exactly. And to finish off, like, let's say if I'm like, okay, fine, I'm at this point where I'm aware that it's coming from an old story that I believed I wasn't smart enough. And my wife is not my teacher. She just gives me feedback. She's my partner. And, but the anger is there still because it hurts because I have this old wound as a kid thinking that. And then I have to think about, okay, what did that kid want? What did he want when he was taking from the world? Because kids learn from the outside in. What did he want when he was thinking that he's not so smart? And if I tune into it myself, I would have wanted someone to tell me how good I am just the way I am, and I don't have this need to be smart or to show off or to be studious, that I have something maybe else to offer, or I have a certain sense of smarts. And sometimes, like today, even I don't even, so I was speaking to my coach and I was saying, like, I don't feel smart. And he's like, you have 10 kids, you have a business, you're an Orthodox Jew, you're doing all these things, you're keeping this whole life together. How could you not be smart from that? But we can't see it because there's that block that's saying, hey, we're trying to cover that up. But really, there's this little kid who's still believing about himself, you're not so smart. So what that kid would need is for some encouragement. Now, when you're saying go and hold space with another person, tell me what that looks like to fully take that process where I could be with a friend, I can share this, and then I can come out of it. Like, how do I get from I'm not smart to I'm actually as smart as I need to be or whatever.
Right, good. So it's really walking through the outside the box tools, which if we could break it down quickly here or not quickly, we'll see how it unravels. The first step is what's the data? The data is that my wife was giving me feedback, and that's a fact. Like we can't argue with the fact that she said, "Hey, Adam, could you be with the kids a little bit more?" That's all she said. And when she said that, it triggered something in you. So now that you sit with me or you sit in your men's group, you would say, "Hey, I want to work through this." So my wife said to me, "We've got to be with the kids more." And what were you feeling or thinking when that was going down? Well, I was thinking that I'm not smart enough, that you're supposed to be my partner, I'm not good enough. And okay, and when you think those thoughts, what are you feeling? And then there's a feeling that comes with it. And that feeling is what anchored that negative belief in your system. So now we go back into the belief, into the feeling. We breathe into that feeling and we go back and we start seeing throughout our lives, we've been playing out a certain pattern, the same pattern. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart. My older brother's better than me. And we even visit that little boy that's just wanting some support, that's just wanting some encouragement. And how do we visit that little boy? We tap into the feelings. And when you're in that feeling, the same feeling that you're feeling today is a feeling that you felt 20, 30, 40 years ago even. So now we ask the feeling, what does the feeling want? If you're feeling this sadness around someone being better than you and you not being smart enough, what do you want? And the feeling says, well, I just want to be understood, or I want to know, I want encouragement to say that I am good enough no matter what. Okay, and if someone told you that, how would you feel? And then I would get you to breathe into your body and imagine what that feels like. And once you start feeling what that feels like, and you do this on a regular basis, you don't just do it once and one and done, but you start practicing this desire that comes out of the feeling. What ends up happening is you're shifting your unconsciousness, because now, instead of living my life from a paradigm of I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, and that's the only pattern that I have, we've now created a choice in your system, in your subconscious. So the more you get in touch with your feelings is the more you get into touch with your subconscious. And the more you could have that choice, so that the next time your wife says the same comment to you, you could pivot and say, hey, I am good enough because I've breathed into it enough times and felt enough times what it feels like to be told I'm good enough. And that creates the shift so that you could change your standard and change your relationships.
So this choice is like, I still might be getting triggered by my wife because she touched an old wound or an old belief about myself, but I can catch myself and see that I could go into that place where I'm thinking that I'm not smart enough and I'm feeling that and it's a little bit weak right now. Or I could say, hey, I'm aware of this. I understand what's going on over here. I just, and I'm going to ask you in a second, but I just breathe into it and I make a choice. Hey, I'm smart just the way I am. My wife's just giving me feedback. And then I can stay connected to my wife and I don't have to build patterns of disconnection and blockages within the relationship. You keep on saying this, and I think it's important to know, like, so what is this whole, like, why do we need to breathe into this? Like we always say, is breathe into that. What's the value of breathing into something?
Yeah, so good question. The outside the box tools is a three-dimensional tool. It's not just something that I could write on paper and understand it cognitively in my brain, in my head. We need to engage our body. So back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, however old you are, and you had disconnection in your family, disconnection from your father, disconnection from your mother, whatever happened to you in the past. In my case, I got slapped in school by my teacher, and I came home, and my parents didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't know how to be there for me. So when that happened, I realized I'm on my own. And when I'm on my own and I'm feeling certain feelings, and there's no one to teach me how to feel these feelings or no one to hold space for my feelings because I just got slapped in school, it's very scary. And the only thing that I could do in order to survive is not allow myself to feel those feelings. And so, what I do, I physically change my breathing patterns so that I don't have to feel those feelings. So, I create tensions in my body, all over my body, my shoulders, my chest, my stomach, my hands, my throat, my face, everywhere, all over my body. I could create tensions, and those tensions block my breathing, my breath, to have a full, healthy, functional breath. And once and therefore I basically stop myself from feeling. The feeling is always there. I just don't. I'm not aware of it. The problem is later in life it shows up when my wife says to me, "Hey, can I give you feedback about something?" And when that shows up, now we got to unpackage all that tension that I created in my body. And I need to allow my breath to go in to connect with my feelings because it's my feelings that anchored this limiting belief. And it's my feelings that are going to take me out of the limiting belief. So I need to, in order to get in touch with my feelings, I need to breathe and breathe all the way from my mouth, all the way into my stomach, because that's where I usually hold all my feelings and all my emotions and connect with my emotions. And those emotions are intimately attached to the limiting beliefs.
And what makes it, if it wasn't safe back then, what makes it safe today to feel those feelings?
Right. So I'm an adult right now, and I have the awareness. When I was a child, I didn't have the awareness that it was safe. I didn't have anyone to speak to. It was just an automatic subconscious reaction. But now that I'm an adult, I have the maturity. I have a mature brain. My brain could say, Adam is a safe person to go to, or this coach is a good person to talk to. This is a safe space for me to open up and finally let go and open up to all my feelings.
Yeah, and as a mature adult, have that GPS system, but safety is really a an experience in the body. So I'm not necessarily any bigger than that little kid who doesn't feel safe because there's plenty of adults that don't want to feel their feelings. What allows a person to possibly feel safe? Like you're saying, go to a person. It's almost like you're recreating, like if you could do it right and you got slapped up in school, you would go to your mother, you go to your father, and they would tell you it's okay. You could break down to them. So it's almost like you're looking for that repair. Why does it have to be done in relationship? If I'm just a mature adult, why can't I just sit here by myself and start to feel into my feelings and tell myself a new story?
So you you got hurt in relationship and you need a healing relationship. Just because you're an adult and breathing into your feelings, you're not getting proper perspective. You're not getting proper feedback. And when your subconscious system knows that there's another human being that's holding space for you, and obviously safety is something that you could build on, but when your subconscious knows that there's a human being there, it and it trusts that human being, it really opens up to the healing that needs to be done. And obviously, trust and safety is not something that just comes. It's something that gets built upon. It's something that a person, I know when I first meet people, they don't fully trust me. Yeah, I'm a safe container that people could talk to, but they don't know me. So it's building our relationship together so they could feel more safe and more trusting to talk to me. Similar to a therapist.
Right, but if a guy, let's say a guy he doesn't necessarily feel that and he's very scared and he's probably got a lot that he's holding on to, like what words can you give to him if he's listening, if he's watching right now, of being able to trust, being able to make a safe space for himself when he's really just scared to go there, like he's built a life of whatever he's built for so many
Yeah.
years of coping,
Yeah.
of dealing.
So what comes to mind is the war is over. You don't have to fight anymore, and it's not something that's going to change overnight. But there are good people out there that could really be there for you, and just knowing that and starting to trust a little bit at a time. You don't have to trust so much, but trust a little bit. Test the waters and start building a relationship. That's where the healing is.
So, and I hear that, and I think it's great. But do you think that someone could have somewhat of a dysfunctional childhood or challenges in their childhood and not work through it and have a good life today? Like, is that possible?
It's an interesting question. I think if they have dysfunction and they haven't worked on themselves, that dysfunction will show up. Like you can't run away from it. It's now what is working on yourself. Everybody has a different way of working on themselves. Um, for some people, it's going to a shul and sitting with friends and just talking, and not necessarily in a perfect therapeutic environment. They have that support from friends. And they don't go to a workshop. For some people, it's coming to a workshop. For some people, it's going to therapy. For some people, it's meeting a men's group once a week.
And so you would say, though, that anybody who hasn't worked through their stuff from the past is not really problem free, even though they could make it look that way. They have, you know, it's like that checkbox. I got the wife, I got the kids, I got the money, I got the house, I got the business, I go to shul 3 times a day or whatever.
So, from my experience, you can't run away from it. It's gonna, especially today. There's so many triggers. We're living in such a fast-paced environment, and there's a lot of people that are overwhelmed and anxious, and yeah, you can't like 30 years ago, maybe you could have put on a good show and get away with it. But I think today it's as far as I've seen that if you have dysfunction, if you have unhealthy patterns from childhood that you haven't dealt with, it's going to show up.
Yeah, it's almost like that is, you could say that's your tikkun, that's why you came down here, is to go into those places that weren't right and show that, never, those moments didn't really define you and limit you.
Right.
You're so much more than that. And that's, I think, a lot of the, even if we're getting a little spiritual, that's the search for God, is like you go through hardship and you're supposed to be able to work through it and find God underneath it. And, anything that limits us and we're acting from a limited way, I have this thing that I tell people is like, you said that pattern keeps on happening to you. You get in the same fight. Is the reason I get into the same fight is because it's a deep calling from my soul saying, hey, this is where you got stuck in life. That's where your soul got stuck, where you stopped believing in yourself. You stopped believing in the greatness of who you are. And I'm going to keep on making this happen for you in an attempt to heal it so you can find your greatness back. So we keep on doing that. The trauma is keep on coming out, the reactions keep on coming out in an attempt to wake you up to heal that part of you that's been wounded.
Yes. Yes.
So I saw guys for years, and I thought maybe in my 30s that these guys were perfect and they had the perfect lives. And I'm seeing now, like, once you get to like a certain age, in your 40s for sure, that's a lot of who we deal with, is like that 35 to 45 range, is guys, and that's why we're saying it. You cannot hide it anymore. You just can't hide it. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna show up. It's gonna show up
Yeah.
in your kids. It's gonna show up in your bank account. It's gonna show up on your. If people can read your gestures today, how you show up. Like, you can't hide it. I'm talking in shul to a guy, and he's calling me all sorts of names, which is amazing. And then I challenge him just a little bit. I just do a little challenge, and he's trying to be this perfect guy that's just sitting there, like, you can't affect me. And he starts twitching in his eye, and I'm like, you don't have to hold it all together. Like,
Right.
like,
Right.
and people feel that it's lonely, it's hard, it's not easy. So yeah, people need to do the work, because it's not just about holding it together. It's about a deeper message where you can trust that you're so much greater than what the world tried to tell you are. And you don't have to fit into this box. I need to be this person. It's almost like spirituality is flexible. It grows, it adapts, it's being reborn all the time. It's not limited to this is who I am. I can make mistakes, I have flaws. I can expand and be more and more and more.
Yeah. I think the probably the most valuable currency today is emotional currency, and the world is waking up to it. It's happening. We're starting to see it. More and more people are becoming more self-aware, more in touch with their feelings, doing more breathing. You see breath works. That why do people do breath work? Is because they want to get in touch with themselves. And why do I want to get in touch with myself? Because I know that the subconscious is controlling me, and I want to be in control. I don't want to be controlled. I don't like the patterns that I'm doing, and it's when you do breath work, it brings up the old patterns. It brings up old feelings. So this work really is an opportunity to find yourself, and bring yourself back into alignment of who you are. And
And
then now imagine being in full alignment of who you are. I'm not triggered, let's say. I'm perfect. Imagine showing up in a relationship that way. How great could that relationship be? Now, obviously, I'm not perfect, but the more, the less triggers I have, and the more I connect to my truth and to who I am as a Jew, as a man, and align with my essence, which is my essence is unlimited. There is no definition of who I am. As soon as I put a definition on myself, I am this, then I'm limiting myself. But I want to connect to my unlimitedness, and I think that's the new currency, because it's very powerful. Because when you connect to that, you don't need money, you don't need power. You're connected to your truth, and therefore you just go out there and you're a happier person. You're creating more, you're expressing more, and it's a great life.
it's living life, as you're saying, is like from the inside out. Is you know, and we never stop the programming of the outside in, which is how the child absorbs life. He takes in life. I'm learning based on experience how I'm supposed to show up to life. That's There's no like handbook for life and say, this is what you do, this is how you react to this. It's like you're learning by absorbing it in, and then you something at some point in time flips the switch and says that's not how life is. It's like the awakening. It's like I say, no, 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 I am actually creating what I'm experiencing. I'm a part of this process. Life isn't just happening to me. It's
Yeah.
actually happening for me to learn something about myself. You flip the switch, and when you flip the switch, you actually stop attracting the things that you don't want in life, because you're able to let go of them now.
Right.
And when you're able
Yeah.
to let go of them, you start manifesting, and just that's the life that you want, is from the inside out. Because then it doesn't depend on circumstance. It doesn't
Yeah.
depend on if I have 20 grand or $20 in my bank account, that I feel good about myself.
Right.
It's I'm just dealing with a circumstance right now, and I could be sad and I can work through it and just move through it, but it's living life from the inside out. I think that's the biggest opportunity of doing work on yourself, is living life from the inside out, because then my life's not determined by my circumstance.
Yeah.
I'm showing up differently. Like my circumstance might not change. My bank account might not grow as much as I want it to grow, but I could live life as me relating to my circumstance. They say you don't tell your God how big your problems is, tell your problems how big your God is. Like that type of saying. It's like meet your greatness, and you can stop complaining about life. And when we don't do this work, I should go back to the beginning. When I don't work on myself, when I'm not working through my triggers around my wife, she always stays my teacher. I always get triggered by her. I always act out of anger. I always emotionally distance myself. I always shut down, and I always make her serve my childhood needs.
Yep.
And I'm showing up from life thinking that this is always going to happen because I can't break free of this loop that I'm stuck in. When I break free from that and I'm living life from the inside out, I can shift that relational paradigm. Like you said, you fought every day with your wife. And now what?
We barely fight. We have a much better relationship because there's less triggers for both of us. And when someone gets upset at each other, we take responsibility pretty quickly. So it's a much happier life. It's a much more supportive life. I'm not fighting with my wife. There's enough out there that I have to deal with in the world. There's so much happening in my life that I think at the very least I need to have a strong foundation with my wife. And you touched on manifestation. That's a big buzzword in the world today, manifestation. And everybody's looking how to manifest. Well, when I think I'm not good enough, I'm going to attract situations that will prove to me that I'm not good enough. It's almost like I want my wife to say certain things to me so that I could get angry, so that I could get upset. But when I do this work and I change the way I show up to life, and I now go into life from a place of I am good enough, and my wife says something to me, she just says something to me, and you know what? I could take that feedback and nothing happens. Just there's no issue, and I fall in love with my wife over and over and over again, and then I start manifesting much more that I want in life by literally changing my belief system.
I think that's, and we're seeing that it's about to be Shavuos, is the foundation of anything in life to manifest something new is what's your belief? What's your belief about yourself? What's your belief about life?
Right.
And, the first commandment is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. It's like, I am your God. In order for you to take on God's Torah and the mitzvahs and all that kind of stuff, you first have to believe that there's a God.
Yeah.
And it's teaching us in order for us to like really go into, if I want to manifest being a good husband and a lover and a connector and someone who's patient, someone who's present, someone who can take things and can be a support to my wife and all these things, I first have to start to believe something about myself in order for me to drop into the structure of what that looks like. And as much as, people say, I want to be that person, and the want is disconnected from what they actually believe about themselves.
Yeah.
So it ends up giving me the life that I don't want. And then why is that? Oh, because I'm just not that type of guy.
Right.
I'm not the type of guy who gets close,
Yeah.
I didn't have that growing up and yada, yada, yada. Or I'm just not a touchy-feely type guy.
Right. 100%.
So the belief is huge.
But in order to switch the belief, remember, you also need to switch the emotion. You
Yeah.
can't just change the belief in your head because if your emotions are lagging behind, you're unconsciously going to react.
Yeah, well,
and you can't even help yourself.
Maybe you could talk to that for a second, because I think that's actually a good piece. Like, why does the emotion, why is that the thing that I need to work through? And I know you said about, like, it's tapped in from the past, it got stuck in your body, but like, why is that? Like, why can't I just change my belief? Why can't I just say I'm a good person?
So it's interesting. I was speaking to someone this past weekend, and he was telling me that he got triggered because he went into a bagel store and he wanted his bagel to be constructed in a certain way. He wanted the lady to remove the inner bread and then put the cream cheese, and only wanted half a bagel. He didn't want a full bagel. And I think the lady behind the counter didn't speak English so well, and she wasn't listening to him. She was cutting it open, not taking out the bread, putting on the cream cheese, adding some vegetables which he didn't want, making it into sandwich, and he lost it. He screamed at her, and some guy behind him said to him, "Why are you screaming at her? She's just working." Like, and when he even left the store, he was asking himself, "Why did I scream at her? I could have politely asked her to change it, or I'm not happy with it." But he was so confused. Why am I feeling angry towards this simple lady? She's not trying to hurt me. She maybe didn't hear properly, or maybe I didn't speak up, or but why am I screaming at her? It's because unconsciously something got triggered inside of him, and he literally can't help himself. And he can't help himself because it triggered an emotion, and that emotion, at his age, I think he's 50 years old, it just it just came out, and he could, without him even being in control. Now, if he works through his stuff and he goes back to the same bagel store and he speaks to the same lady and she does the same thing to him, he won't get angry because he'll realize this is not about me being not enough or whatever limiting belief that comes with that emotion when that lady doesn't make his sandwich. Because the limiting belief that comes up for him is, who do you think you are? How dare you not make my sandwich for me? I'm the customer. And you what do you think I am? You think I'm not good enough? And all of a sudden he's back into his patterns that he's been playing for the last 50 years. But now that he works through it and he feels that emotion coming up, he could say, okay, let me breathe into that emotion, even if it's for 3 seconds as I'm standing in line. Close my eyes, just, hey, I know that emotion. It's nothing to do with this lady. And I'm here. I'm being present to that feeling. And then just calmly tell the woman, hey, that's not how I wanted it. I need you to switch it up without getting angry.
Right. So that the emotion is coming from that belief, and the emotion is the charge, it's the energy that that belief holds, like how deep of a wound it is for me.
Yes.
And so if it could be that I yell at a bagel lady, or if a barista doesn't put enough whipped cream on my frappuccino, then I lose it because I didn't get exactly the amount. It's like something with a lot of energy came up to the surface. It's attached to a belief. And so if I work on the emotion, then there's that energy's gone, because emotions are energy in motion. Energy's gone. I feel that belief. It's a little triggered, fine, but I don't lose it because it's just showing me how much belief I have around the fact that I'm not good enough, let's say.
Right.
And and I haven't worked through that emotion, which is the charge, which is causing this like pressure cooker type experience. And that's causing the reaction. So if I don't work on the emotion, there's no chance I'm not going to react.
Correct.
Because emotions are intense.
Yes.
It's energy. It's bigger than being logical.
Correct. Right.
Because
Right.
even if I know in my mind what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm still acting out because the energy's too much.
Yeah.
And so as you're saying, like if you work through that, it's like that's how it got stuck in. You work that, you find the belief because it's attached to that emotion. And then you could slowly let go of that by letting go of the emotion. So as you're letting go of the emotion, you're saying that you're getting rid of the belief also, you're lessening the grip of the belief that it has on you.
You're letting go of the belief, and you're starting to create a new belief. You're reframing your life. So instead of me walking around 24/7 thinking I'm not good enough and processing life from that paradigm, I'm now processing life from a new paradigm, which is I am good enough.
But what if I never saw that? Like if I never saw that I'm good enough in my life, I literally never saw it. And I'm not talking about me, but if a person had like a real bad life, why would they just start being able to believe that they're good enough out of nowhere?
That's the power of the human being, that anybody could change. We see it in Tanya, we see it in Tyra, that anybody could really make that change, even if they didn't have the proper role models growing up. And again,
even if they never experienced it.
even if they never experienced it. And I think a lot of it has to do with my emotions. The emotions are actually your best friend. So if you know how to tap into the emotions and utilize it, it could really be, you could really use it to your advantage.
Yeah, for sure. Like, when I'm working with a guy in a coaching session, I've seen this recently. Get a guy fired up, and he had this plan that he's been sitting on for months and months, thinking, is it good enough? Is it this? And then we got into a good place. He was feeling it. He made the call. He literally closed the client in this exact same day, and it was a big deal. But the plan was sitting there for months. He couldn't follow through. It's like the emotions are your passion. It's your drive. It's allowing you to push through to something new, and teach you something about yourself. Because if you think about it all day, the mind is always calculated. It's always looking for the potential risks and how it couldn't work out, and it's not really there to take you to these you climbing the mountain. It's
Yeah,
really not.
right.
It's going to make a calculated attempt at maybe why you can't or can and how long. But the emotions push through anything. It's like the world is breaking through records with emotions, whether it be running, breaking records, sports,
Yeah.
everything.
I think you're right. Like in every industry, especially high performance industries, they're using this work to some degree because they're realizing that it, this could really change outcomes. It could be the difference between being hugely successful and not.
Yeah, your emotions got to be in check. I always say this to people. You don't have problems in life. You have emotions that you don't want to feel. And if you can harness your emotions, you can literally do anything.
Yeah.
It's powerful energy.
Yeah. You see it in sports. A guy like Tom Brady, he was able to keep his emotions in check even when his team is down by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Um, you see it in every sport, in every high performance, and it's those guys that know how to not let their emotions get the best of them. They're the ones that are the most successful, and they're the ones that have actually worked through their emotions and their triggers and figured it out.
Yeah.
And I think anybody could do this. Anybody could do this. Anybody could be someone that works through things. It's so much more accessible today. It's so much easier. There's so many more people doing it today.
28 years married, and we're talking about emotional blockages in relationships. It's like you have years of experience doing it with a lot of kids. Is what are the benefits from you that you see that you can give to other people of why I should be really fully connected to my wife? I know it might sound like a stupid question, but guys that are in it for a long time and not feeling anything, like what are the benefits when someone starts working on this all that they could see in their relationship?
The way humans were created, the way God created us was to be in relationship. We say the person that triggers you the most is probably going to be your wife. And really, what does that mean? It means that she's reminding you that she wants you to be a better person. And she's not doing it on purpose. You're the one that is showing up with some dysfunction in the relationship, and your wife is just being your wife. And it's reminding you to work on yourself. And when you work on yourself, the relationship should be that the man is the masculine. He goes out to work. He protects the family. And he sometimes needs to get a little dirty. Sometimes he needs to put on a mask because he's dealing with people that he has to put on a mean mask. He has to put on an angry mask sometimes to protect his family. But ultimately, that's not who he is. That's just a role that he's playing in the relationship. And what should happen is that man should come home to be greeted by the feminine then the feminine helps him unconsciously take off that mask and to be surrendered to himself, that he doesn't have to put on a show. He doesn't have to make believe or fake an identity. He could just be fully himself. And that's what the feminine provides him. And then when he's fully himself, he's a nourisher, he's a provider, and the feminine feeds off of that as well. The feminine, by definition, is the person that doesn't go out into the world to be a protector, that doesn't put on these mean masks or these angry masks, because the feminine is there to hold space, to cultivate, to be with the children. And when you have that relationship, the whole environment in the house changes. And it's sad, because you have people that are 50 years old that are coming to us, and they've been telling me for 29 years I've been with the same woman and she's crazy, and they've built up so much belief about their wives, and it's almost that their ego doesn't let them surrender and take responsibility, because there's so much dysfunction that these two people created. And it really takes one partner to decide, you know what, I'm going to surrender, and I'm going to really, really work on myself. And you'll see that the other partner, if it's the man, then the wife will automatically just fall into place, like just not fall into place, but start working through some of her stuff. And even if you've been married for 30 years and there's been a lot of dysfunction in relationship, I believe that if someone wants to, they could radically change their relationship. Even if you have all these negative complaints and dysfunctions and beliefs about your wife, we could change that. That could be changed. But it takes a real man, and I think this is what a man is. A powerful man, to me, is someone that's humble, that's willing to take responsibility. That's a powerful man.
Yeah, I always say this. It's always the piece about responsibility. Responsibility is not necessarily what you did in the past. It's how you show up going forward. And okay, I make mistakes. I was that guy that got triggered and lost myself at you. But how am I choosing to show up now? Do I hold on to that? Does the previous moment get carried into the current moment? That means I have stuff to work out there.
Yeah.
And responsibility is about, like, how do I want to show up now? And you mentioned one point, and I think this is important for people to know, is whatever you're experiencing in your relationship is a mirror. It's a mirror to where you're at if you see the mirror, if you see what's being reflected to you. But most people, they don't want to see the message. And there is a concept in Torah. It says, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, that God created the whole world just for me. That means, and especially in a relationship, because your relationship with your wife, she's going to trigger you. Not that it's such a bad thing. It's just she's helping you be aware of your old wounds. The whole world's being created for me. So even though my wife is doing her things, like, how much time do I spend looking at her mirror versus my own? Telling her what her work is. Telling her what she needs to see. Hey, I'm your mirror. Listen to me.
Yeah.
Or how much time do I spend? And we did this last night. How much time do I spend looking at the mirror of what my relationship is showing me? If you really believe it's a mirror, if you really believe she's your second half, that means you have to be able to see the communication that's coming back at you. When you do that, as you're saying, everything changes. Your whole life changes. You have this, setup that's amazing, where your wife can let go, be who she wants to be, this real feminine, to be a nurturing care, and to me to go out and to face what I have to face and come back home and do that. And it's a perfect balance. And my wife supports what I'm doing. She supports who I am.
Yeah.
If I take the message and realize where my deficiencies are and start to work on it, become the person that I ultimately want to be, and then my wife gets to be who she wants to be.
Yeah.
But the relationship is always moving at the same vibration, meaning if I'm not working on myself and I'm telling my wife to work on herself, the relationship doesn't get up leveled.
Right.
It
Right.
stays stuck. It's
Yeah.
like, you need to come and meet me here because I'm not confident here. And then you come back down to her level. It's like, it's
Yeah.
happening. It's all a mirror. It's at the
Yeah.
same level. Whatever you think about your wife is what you think about yourself.
Yep. Yep.
That's a strong message for people to hear, but you can't like you're saying, you can't hear that unless you're really working on that message. You have to feel that that's the truth.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like your wife is really being a fill in the blank.
Right. Yeah. And I think people need to see the benefits of it because most of us want to be right. And sometimes we are right in an argument, but who cares to be right? Why would you want to be right? You want to be in love. So sometimes your wife could say something and she's wrong, but you don't need to tell her that she's wrong.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Is eh, being right automatically makes the other person wrong.
Right.
So that's not in sync in relationship. We have to be at the same level. If one person's wrong, then automatically it's not a relationship. Relationship is we're at the same level.
Right. And I think, man and woman, they say we're two halves. Or when Adam and Chava were created, how Hashem took a part of Adam's body. If we start showing up in relationship that we are one as opposed to two, it's not me and you, it's us. I want to go out tonight. Do us want that? We have an issue. We have something to deal with. It's always us. Then it's not me against you anymore. It's okay. There's an issue. I'm upset or I'm angry about something, and maybe I need to hold space for us so that one of the partners is not angry or is not upset.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that you should speak that way,
Right.
like,
Right.
but that should definitely be how you relate to this situation. Like if I'm having an issue, my wife's gonna feel it. If she's having an issue, I'm gonna feel it. Whether you want to believe it or not, you're affected by your second half.
And just last week, you had a few people come to me and talk to me, and they kept on saying, "My wife is this. My wife is crazy. My wife has issues," and it's basically two people living in the same house and saying, if that person changes, then our relationship is going to be better, instead of approaching it from that unified place that we're in this together.
For sure. So what's like one final message that you can give to people for this first podcast? If he makes it till the end, this is what he's gonna hear.
Yes. The final message is your wife is not your enemy. She's just reminding you, not because she's doing it on purpose. It's just she's living her life, and it's reminding the triggers in your body that there's maybe an insecurity, maybe there's a limiting belief or maybe there's an identity that you're holding on to. And really, like Tony Robbins says, the person that triggers you the most is really your best friend, because it's reminding you that there's work to do. And when I show up, that I'm my number one, the number one in my life is me. When I show up and I've worked through issues and I show up in relationship, that relationship could be the most beautiful, loving relationship ever. Thank you for joining this podcast. I hope you got a lot of value from this podcast. If you feel that a friend of yours or someone you know could benefit, please share this with them. Hit the subscribe button, and we're here for you. We're here to make a difference, and you're here to make a difference, and we could all do this together.